So, hello everyone. This is a new meetup that Tunis R User Group is organized. I'm so pleased to be part of this chapter. Mainly Tunis R User Group aims to provide a network for our users in Tunisia and worldwide. You are a woman who love programming with R. This is our team. I'm Muna Blaid. I'm basically engineer in statistics and data analysis, and I'm currently a business intelligence consultant. Amal Jili, who is also the co-founder of the user group, is a data science engineer and basically engineer in statistics, and also Hediat Nami. She's also an engineer and postdoctoral fellow at Pasteur Institute of Tunis. This is just an overview of our user groups worldwide. Today there is more than 887 groups worldwide with a lot of members, and you are really happy that you have started this new chapter in Tunisia a few months ago. You have a code of contact, so let's start. Let's just keep making this virtual place as welcoming as possible for everyone. You started organizing workshops recently, so that are part of the One Package per Meetup series. Today, the workshop will be about the use of the R package r2D3. So we are so pleased to have Zaynaib Giwa between us. Zaynaib is a data analyst and web developer based out of Chicago. She's also a co-organizer of iLadies Chicago. This is just an overview about our next meetups. So next on November 11, we'll be pleased to, before that, so if you want to review the recording video of our last workshop that you organized about the GG Animate package in R, we were so pleased to be hosting Mitchell. So please just have a look at our YouTube channel. I will be sharing the link later on the chat. Then on November 11, we're pleased to host Dean Atali and Verly Van Limput about new workshop to learn about the BS, for Dash and Color Picker R packages. Yes, then we'll be pleased also to be hosting Thomas Lynn Pedersen, who's a software engineer at R Studio, and we'll learn a lot about the tidygraph package. As I told you, we'll make a recording video. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to leave your question in the chat. You are also free if you want to unmute yourself. And yes, later we'll have a short feedback form. It would be nice to know your feedback, so it will allow us to improve the quality of the meetups that you organize. Thank you all for your attention. And so Zaynaib, the screen is yours.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. My slides are shared in the Slack, and also the R code. It's shared with my GitHub repo. I'm just going to share my screen now. Okay, and I'm going to present. So this talk is D3 for our users. I noticed when people were coming in, a lot of people are just new to the world of D3 and the package r2D3. So this is going to be an introduction to both. And my name is Zaynaib, but a lot of people from the States, they know me by my nickname Ola. I'm a data analyst at the Visible Institute in Chicago, and you can follow me on Twitter. Here's my handle. All right, so the agenda for today, I'm gonna talk about what is R2D3 and D3, the building blocks of D3. And I'm going to describe a workflow of creating data visualizations with D3. So let's learn together. My Little Pony is my favorite. So what is D3? D3 stands for data-driven documents. D3 allows you to make highly customizable interactive graphs on the web. So this one is one of my favorite graphs. It's a data visualization about all the ice cream flavors that Ben and Jerry's have created. And it's kind of like a scrolly story. So when you scroll down, you can see the points moving around. And when you scroll over a point, it describes like what the flavor is, the countries where it's available. And there's more things that you can do with D3, but this is an example. Unfortunately, D3 has a super high learning curve. In order to even step your toe into the world of D3, you're going to need to know a little bit about web development. You're going to need to know the basics of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript before you start learning D3. But R has this package called r2D3. It takes data that you have in R and puts it into a JavaScript script, a D3 script, and it's kind of like a fusion of both. So the r2D3 package is just a wrapper. It's like an abstraction, and so even though it's best to learn the prerequisites, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, it makes it a little bit easier to set up your data visualizations. Usually when you create a D3 script, the data that you are working with is usually in the format of like a CSV file or a tab file or JSON file. And so it's really nice to have all of your tools in one place, which is RStudio or whatever R editor you like. And so the concept of both graphics in R, the ggplot package, and D3 stems from the grammar of graphics. So it stems from a place you have your data layer, and then you're going to map it onto an X and a Y, and then you're going to map it to your aesthetics. So your X, your Y, your colors, your fills, and your data is going to be represented in geometries like points for scatter plots, lines for line plots, bar for bar plots, etc. And so this is an example of code using ggplot2 package. We have our data, HP 2013 Q1. So this is our data. These are our statics. We're mapping structure.cost to the Y, and we're mapping land.value to X. And then we have our geometry, which is a point, which is going to make just a scatter plot, even without like looking at the results. You can tell that this is going to make a scatter plot. And so even this is an example of D3. There's a lot more code here, but it's still the same like concepts of the grammar of graphics. We have our data layer. We have our genome, which is a circle. And then we are mapping a value to the X, and then we're mapping a value to the Y. So one of the fundamental concepts of making a D3 visualization, you're going to need to know what are SVGs. SVGs, they stand for scalar vector graphics. They use vectors instead of pixels. So you can make your images really tiny, or you can make them really wide, really large, and the image is not compromised. And so here's like an example of using raster graphics, and you can see that it's kind of like pixelated when you transform it to be really big. And then this is an example of SVG, like vector graphics. And you can see that the picture quality is the same. There's many types of SVGs, kind of similar to the ggplot package. So we use circles for scatter plots, use direct SVG to create bar plots, and we can use path or line SVGs in order to create line graphs. And so one thing that tripped me out when first handling making D3 graphics is the coordinate system is inverted. So our traditional system, the X00, it's on the lower left-hand corner, and the SVG coordinate system is flipped with the 00 on the upper left-hand corner. And so I have little exercises. This is a tool called ColdPen, and it allows you just to play with the front end work. So it has HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I created like 2 circles using SVGs, and so all your SVGs have to be within the tag called SVG. And yeah, here are my circles. I can change the color. So if I don't want it to be yellow, I can change it to red. And it automatically updates. This is my C-axis, my X, and my Y. This is where I want the point where I want my circle to be drawn. So if I change my X to be 0 and my Y to be 0, it should be on the upper, you see it created it on the upper left-hand corner. If I wanted to move my X a little bit down, I could just make it as 10, 20. And then, oh, sorry, X is left to right, and then Y is top to bottom. So if I wanted to put it down, I could just put it to 30, and it like moves down a little bit. Yeah. And this is how you do it in HTML. And here's an example using D3 functions. So I have a width. I'm creating my canvas, my SVG canvas, my blank canvas, where I'm going to put all of my genomes in, my geometries in. So I want my width to be 100, the entire view, and I want my height to be 400. And I'm using D3 functions to create it. So I would select my canvas, which I created here. I appended an SVG tag, and I'm giving it the width and the height that I specified before. And then I'm adding, well, I put my circle here, but I'm adding a circle SVG onto my SVG canvas, giving it the location 150 to 300. The radius is how big I want my circle to be, and the fill. And you can play around with these as much as you like. If I wanted to create it smaller, here, there. All right. Another fundamental concept when it comes to creating D3 visualizations is called data binding. Data binding is a special way of joining my data to my SVG geometries. And so there's three states of this. There's the enter, update, and exit state. For right now, I'm just going to talk about the enter state. And so the enter state is when you don't have any elements on your so it's better to like show than tell. Oops. Just going to use another browser to do this. And if there's any questions out there, just holler. I can't see the chat. Oh,
yeah, so there is one question from Kurnaz asking, could you use SVG file in GG Animate for the package GG Animate?
I'm not sure. I'm not really familiar with the GG Animate package. I'm sorry that I can't answer that.
It's okay.
All right, so I'll just minimize this. And so again, this is the height and width of my canvas, my SVG canvas, where I'm going to put all my SVG genomes here. I have data, just a random list of data points, and I am trying to bind my data into the canvas, so it's easier to inspect. So even though I don't have an SVG here on the HTML, this piece of code here, I appended the SVG tag into HTML. Now I'm trying to bind this data, number data, to rectangles. But as you can see here, we don't have rectangle, we don't have the rectangle tags yet. And so it's just gonna, so this part is just gonna select an empty container. And so the data dot, the data function is creating like 3 different states: the enter, the exit, and there's no like update state. And so I want to say, hey, I want to bind my data into the HTML. So I'm going to use enter. And you can see that all of these states are gone, and it's bounded. My data's bounded. And so I want to bind them to my rack genomes. So just going to do dot append. And you can see now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 rectangles here. And I had about 5 data points here. And so my data points are associated with these rectangles, but we don't see anything yet. And so we just have to give it attributes. I'm cheating here. That's most of what coding is. So I'm gonna give my rectangles the width of 10. Like manually calculating the height to be the height of the data points. And then I'm calculating like where it should be located and on my HTML. And then I'm giving it a style of like till. So just combining like all those concepts together. And then one of the most important concepts of creating a D3 graph is the scales. So before I had like a complicated way of like manually calculating like the height of my graphs, you know, what pixel, X, Y, should all the bars be placed on my HTML, canvas. And scales will just automatically do the work for you. So you don't have to write all of that ugly code that I showed you previously. And so this is like a visual representation of a scale. So let's pretend that we had, we wanted to map life expectancy on the y-axis. And so our highest point is 90 and our lowest life expectancy is 15. And so, as I said before, the SVG coordinate system is inverted. So 0, 0 is on the upper left side. And so I'm going to put my 90, translate it to 0 and to 0, 0 here. And I'm going to translate 15 50 down here. And so again, and here, so again, this is the same graph as before, the same data. So I have 5 data points and I just want to map them correctly. And so I'm using the scale linear function because I have numerical data that's continuous. And I'm trying to find the minimum, the lowest point of this list, which is 8, and the highest, which is 100. And I want it to be on a scale from like 0 to 100 pixels. And so I'll do all the math for me. And so if I'm like, okay, if my value is 0, like what should be that in pixels? How am I going to translate to pixels? And it says that it's going to be negative 8.6, and the same with the value of 55. And so you kind of, it's like almost the same as before. I created my SVG canvas. I'm selecting, an empty container for my rectangles. I'm going to bind my data. with data and enter, and I'm going to pen all my rectangles onto the SVG canvas, use my width, and then I'm gonna be like, okay, my height is just going to be the scale that I created. And I'm still calculating like the X and Y here. So yeah. So those are all the concepts for just to learn D3. And here's the workflow. This is from Elijah Meeks. First, you want to select where you want to, put the geom in. Oh, sorry. Is there a question?
Yeah, so it's okay. So Salim asking, can you read data from some other files?
Yeah. I have examples of that, but yeah, you can read data from CSV files, JSON files, TSV files, like many files, different file formats. And so this is the D3 workflow. So I want to select the element that I want to bind my data to. Then I actually want to bind my data, and then I'm going to either create elements into my canvas, my CSV canvas, update or remove elements. And then if I want to be fancy, like the Ben and Jerry's, the ice cream wrap that I showed you before, I can make user interactives, maybe like tooltips, or if you hover over something, like you can change the colors to it. And so, oh, and this is the r2D3 API. It kind of abstracts some of the things for you. So it's just probably better just to show. You can find these examples on my GitHub, which is shared in the chat. But this is like the example straight out of the website. So first I load up the r2D3 graph, and then I have my data. This is I believe you call this a vector in R, and I'm going to put this data inside of my script called basic bar.js, and I'm going to do some styling with CSS. So you see, let me just run this. Okay, I think I am in the wrong, yes I am. Set in the wrong directory. Okay, and it generates a bar chart for you. And so let's look into basic bar.js. And so I have the height of my bar. I'm calculating the height of the bar. Height is the viewpoint. It says it in the API, just the height of the container. This is the same code that I've been showing you guys like a while. So I'm selecting the SVG, which is my canvas. I'm selecting rectangle, which is just an empty container, and I want to bind it to my SVG. So I'm going to use data enter, and then I'm going to append rectangles to my data, and I'm going to give it the width And so I'm gonna just say, hey, I want to use this data for my D3 graph. And I am going to put it in a script called bar.js. Let me just open that file. And I did like a little bit more stuff to it, but it's still the same effect of, okay, I'm selecting where I want to bind the data, I'm binding the data, and I'm appending my geometry to the data, which is rectangle. And I am putting my where the location I want to put my bars in into my viewpoint. Yeah. So I don't really have anything else to say. We can go through just live coding examples. If you guys want.
Yes, okay, I think it would be cool, good, nice.
Okay. So I'm just going to get a random example off the internet. There is this.
Maybe could I ask a quick question,
Yeah.
clarification? So now I'm wondering about the first command in the chains of when you're building a plot. It's always select all, and in the beginning, okay, for instance, if you go to the first D3 example that you had in JavaScript, or even, yeah, exactly here, for instance, you have, or here, why are we selecting? Because the SVG is initially empty, right? Why do we need this part of code? There is no rectangle element. I recall in the first D3 example that you saw, you embedded the SVG by code in the body element, and then you still wrote select all. Could you maybe explain a bit of the intuition behind the selection?
Yeah, I'll do my best. I think this is just the way that D3 is set up. Like you have to, or I I'm just thinking about it. So and just so D3 is just a package of JavaScript, and like, but using JavaScript in general, in order to like modify something that's in your HTML, we call it the DOM, like an element that's like in your HTML. You have to select it in order to modify it. So whether you want to append a div tag to your HTML, whether you want to delete a paragraph tag in your HTML, you must select like something there. And so, and that's kind of the same concept with D3. Like you have to like select an element in order to modify it. And then it's just like the problem with D3 is just like you said before, like we don't have rectangles at this point. And so we are going to have this placeholder container. Okay, just do what I want. And I'm not going to tell you how to do it, just do it. Does that make?
Yeah, it makes sense. So essentially, now, because you have no DOM here, right?
Mm-hmm.
You assume that, I mean, the code behind assumes that there is some element that starts inserting the data there, and afterwards we put it somewhere. Or this is maybe the idea that you were talking about, because this code is generic, I guess. It can be applied. I thought that the first part was selecting the element, namely of the DOM, namely the SVG, was selecting the SVG, and then we were putting data inside this element. But the way that you explained it to me now, there's another selection going on. Did I understand correctly?
Yep. I have an example. I think I have it in my. Yep. Okay. Here you go. I'm just gonna put it in the chat, and this is gonna explain the data binding process for you.
Okay, I will check it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for your question. That's a good question.
There is another interesting question from George. So can this be used with R Markdown Shiny?
Totally. I mean, I have an example of it, but yeah, that's the whole purpose of R2. Okay, yeah, okay, I don't need to explain anymore. I have an example of that. Markdown. Just gonna set this. I'm not that familiar with Markdown, unfortunately, but just run on. Yeah. Any other questions? I don't think you put no. Oh yeah, this is the same. This is the same bar as before.
Yeah. So Maria, she's asking about an example of D3 visualization or visual embedded into a Shiny dashboard.
I could try to Google one, but I personally haven't seen one, but I know it's possible because it said so on the package website. I'm just gonna. Or I guess I can share my screen, like what I'm doing. Yeah. So this is the R2 D3 website. Says our Markdown reports and Shiny, interactive Shiny. So see if they have an example of that. It seems like they just have the code on how to create these things, but not actually an example with Shiny. So and I can put this link in the chat as well. Yeah. So here's an example of one. Yeah, everyone has the same consistency when it comes to D3. It's hard, but it's worth it. And we can try to recreate what this person is doing, or I can try to narrate what's going on here. It depends on what the group would like to do. But yeah, it seems like they created, oh, okay. Yeah, it seems like they created the D3 script here. And it's the same, it's kind of like the same pattern. This is the, I'm not sure what bars is, but it seems like they're data binding, binding the data to bars and appending it to rectangle. And then giving it X and Y attributes in order for the bars to appear. And they are using some interactions, dot on, that deals with JavaScript interactions. So whenever someone, yeah, not 100% sure. Let me see. It seems like when someone clicks on the bar, it's supposed to show the ID. I'm not, okay. So, okay. So whenever I click on the bar, it shows the data of that bar, which is pretty cool. On mouse over, it's saying like, hey, whenever the mouse is on this particular bar, I want you to give it a color. And so we've seen that whenever we hover over to blue. And then whenever our mouse out, it's like whenever the mouse is not on the bar, it's going to return to the color. And we've seen that on and off, on and off.
Could you please zoom out a little bit your screen?
Yeah, I can try.
Yeah, it should be nice.
Or
no, looks like it becomes smaller, so maybe it's okay. Yeah, now it's better. Yes.
oh,
Thank you so
okay.
much. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. So I guess I should tie this back to the workflow. So you select your elements, you bind it, and then we append our geoms, and then we create our user interactions. So I'll just go again. So it seems like all of these functions are helper functions, determine the height, the width of the bar charts, or of the bars, or geometries. And then it's kind of the same selections that we've been seeing before. I want to select the SVG. I'm going to select all the rectangles. So this is an empty container. I'm not sure why this person appended the data like this, but it seems like, oh yeah. And then I want to append it to my empty container, and I want my data to enter the SVG, and I want it to be associated with rectangles. And so again, these are all the attributes that I want my rectangles to have. And whenever you see dot on in the D3 graph, that is symbolizing, hey, these are interactions that I want it to do. So I'm just wondering, the person who asked that question about Shiny, are you also like a Shiny app creator?
So this is a question for George or Maria. So from Maria. So she said just a beginner.
Okay. Any more questions, or I can just show you how to get a random graph from D3 and just put it into an R script. Okay. What is the best reference to learn D3? So favorite my favorite book is by Amanda Wittenberg. It's called Full Stack D3. It's a little bit pricey. There's free resources as well. Elijah Meeks, he has his own free course. I put it. Okay. He has a YouTube channel. I'll just put it in the chat. And also just looking at okay. Okay, I will find it before this ends, but it's also D3 in depth. That's a free website. Also looking at other people's examples. I really like the D3 graph gallery. And there is a site called Observable. So it's kind of like Python notebooks, but for D3. And so you can go and fiddle around other people's works. How did I learn D3? I learned it by reading a book, the Amanda Waller book, Wattenberg book, and then this book as well. But I prefer the Full Stack D3 book. And,
thank you for sharing.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you for listening. I know there were like a lot of concepts to go into, but like with everything, it just takes practice. Let me find the Elijah. Here we go. And then there's Shirley Wu. Okay, I found it. This is a great introduction to D3. It's like a full course that's free on YouTube. And he'll take you step by step in order to create graphs. Okay. So, are there any more questions? Oh, and then if you want a community aspect, there is this Slack group called the Data Viz Society. And so there are like a lot of D3 experts just hanging around, and D3 also has their own Slack group as well. So yeah. Any other questions, or everybody, we can all start like a D3 study group.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have anything more to say, but I want to thank everyone for coming. And thank you for inviting me to talk.
Thank you so much, Zainab, for sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you all for attending. If you still have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Otherwise, don't forget to join our meetup group. So I'll be sharing with you the link now. And if you want to review this workshop later, it would be okay, because we share the recording video on our YouTube channel. Hope to see you during the next session. Thank you all for attending. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye bye. Have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye.